So we seem to have reached a consensus, which in some ways I wasn't really expecting, that it will be...
Well, do something about that.
that actually it will be incredibly difficult to have some kind of unified controlling home gateway for the home network, which is counterintuitive to what you'll hear from a lot of network providers. And in the end, they're the guys that are going to have to install and make these things work. So let's continue to unpick that, talking about what use the network will be put to, and therefore what demands will be made on it, and what that leads to in terms of what its strengths need to be, and also what its problems are going to be. And a key part of this is going to also be the user interface. In terms of usability, I certainly know that with my home network, I don't envisage wanting to have to use lots of different browsers, lots of different EPGs to make the thing work. Isn't that going to be an absolutely crucial part of the home network?
Well,
and difficult to achieve in a hybrid?
Well, I don't think the hybrid actually makes it particularly any more difficult. I mean, actually, I think some of the user interface things are overblown, in that the last thing in the world I want is for most of my end users to become sort of network professionals and network managers. You know, they don't need to, and it's probably dangerous if I give them the tools to do that. What they do need primarily, I think, is the availability of content. So they need an easy way of actually browsing content irrespective of where that's stored in the house. I mean, at the moment, it will typically be on the set-top box itself, but increasingly on the PC and other devices, etc., etc. So having a unified view of where the content is and the ability to essentially play it in inverted commas from a device, that's the kind of user interface I think you need. And I think there's every prospect that you can have some kind of unification there. I mean, there are already some products out there which are actually very much going in that direction. But again, giving the end user the ability to micromanage their home network, I think, will be a mistake.
But in terms of having a very simple drag and drop, usability sort of interface, you don't need a gateway to do that, is what you're saying.
No, and again, I don't care where this lives. Again, what you need, this is very much where things like, some of the content discovery aspects of DLNA come in. What you basically need to say, okay, what's out there? I really don't care where it is. I don't care if this is running on the gateway or wherever. I mean, again, there's another debate we could have about whether or not the gateway is primarily a storage device. My personal view is I don't think it is, but there are many storage devices there. So again, all I care about is that there's content there somewhere, and I want to access it. And I really don't care, what's doing that.
Neil, you've got to provide the software that kind of makes all of this happen. So how does access work back from what you believe the customer is going to want to get?
Yeah, ultimately it all comes down to a simple, easy discovery of content. You've got these two worlds. You've got the pay TV operator, predominantly the cable, satellite and telcos providing their version of the world, and then you've got the retail kind of internet open model consumer electronics devices world, and those two are in friction and battle at the moment, as it were, which is fascinating for everybody and driven in many ways by different mindsets by the individual. But the key thing is that the operator themselves is, one of their primary USPs is making it simple for viewers. Otherwise, people would all go and do it themselves. So to take away this problem that people have to be, technically competent, just make it simple for them to get their content. And so the operator does have a beautiful opportunity to provide that user interface. Classically you would see somebody like a Sky Virgin or BT, the operator providing that user interface and just adding in another part of the user interface. In other words, having an extension to the EPG where you've got the grid-based EPG, adding another part of that to your DLNA services, just accessing your home videos and home photos from those other devices is a relatively trivial problem, and I think people would be quite happy to, if they plugged in upstairs to their computer their digital video camera, and on their TV came up a picture of their digital video camera and some of the files were there, and then they could just play them and all that worked. That would be the nice nirvana utopia. We'd all be sitting there going, the home network does work. If you're just playing photos and doing a slideshow to your grandparents when they come around from that digital video camera, that you're just taking the pictures of the birthday party of your kids, that'd be wonderful.
And so the UI side of it can, again, be something that sits in the browser level, doesn't have to be that complicated, doesn't have to be provided by the pay TV provider?
Just to be clear, the browser is often not used as that. Often the EPG is not a browser-based application, as it were. Normally the EPG is some kind of specifically built application, even if it does display stuff on the screen. So that EPG, just adding in an extra level of TV file manager. I hate the word file manager from a PC world because it implies lists, and you mentioned drag and drop, which is a very dangerous thing as well when you've got remote control. This is a remote control driven world, so really all you're doing is up, down, left, right, and it has to be very simple to manipulate that. We don't want to get into the QWERTY keyboard type of remote controls, unless in the future you have remote controls with like the Wii, where you can actually move it around, but that's still a bit of a way off. We're still talking about up, down, left, right, based on a normal Skype type of remote control, in which case you're just going to be watching your normal video, normal TV, your broadcast TV, your BBCs, your EastEnders, and then you just select another option, and up comes up your more video, your home video, and that's really all we're talking about at the first level. When we get to another level and we want to then talk about the whole open internet YouTube model, that's a completely different paradigm. And I think we have to be very careful to split the two, because really what people want to care about at the moment is really just getting their home videos and more video content on the TV, and it's got to be a certain amount of management, because you can't have all this illegal content. In some ways you've got to leave it to the consumer electronics device open internet model, because the pay TV operator has an interest in protecting the rights of their content producers.
So, it sounds like, again, a bit like with the hybrid network, there's the suggestion that we can take this as in steps. The pay TV provider or somebody else can provide a bit more navigation and a bit more search and a bit more storage, and you've got a bit of a home network. But you were talking about future-proofing and thinking about all of the things that subscribers might want to do. Do you think there is going to have to be more of a management level? And is it going to, be it through a UI and be that provided by some kind of gateway controller?
Again, so I think what we haven't yet arrived at is the idea of the smart home distributor. I'm not going to call it a gateway for now, I'll just call it a distributor which has a gateway device in it. I think we're focused far too much on video content coming from reputable service providers. If you look at the internet today, most of the content is user-generated content. By far, way over what any commercial operation delivers to us. So I think we can't forget the aspect that users want to share their content with family, friends, and others. And the content is going to be going up as well as not just coming down. It would be real horrific if you're watching something on television, grandmother phones in, and you can't deliver the video message to her and she can't see her grandkids. That will create more of a family feud than will your TV, which has been interrupted. So I think we've got to get to a point where not only does the home hub distributor become smart enough to identify what's important to you in context, but also is able to maybe work with a laptop or something, but identify what it is you've got going across that pipe. Even though we now work on a fiber pipe into the home, we are going to be limited to what we can put down that pipe. The early trials are going to start on 10 megs, yes, hopefully we'll go to 100 megs. People like Singapore are talking about a gigabyte. Bandwidth is going to be consumed, and we're going to need to, in the home, prioritize it. I also don't think it's only about content. I think we've got to move it to the smart home environment. It's about how people work, how people play, how people watch entertainment, and how they sign up to other services that might come across this network.
So, and we haven't really talked about the return path, and particularly where UGC is concerned, in terms of uploading, that's going to be a big issue. I mean, is this the kind of Rubicon that you either cross or you don't cross? Is the moment you open up the television to the internet and to over-the-top services and contention issues, return path issues, content security issues?
You can't stop this train. This train is coming. The reality is you live in three worlds. You live in the cloud, you live in the devices in the home, and you live on mobile devices. And the content is going to come from all sources, and it's going to go to all sources. And so the question is, are you going to provide a free flow of that content in both directions? And the user interface, the presumption, the fundamental flaw in the presumption that we've been talking about is that the world revolves around the television. But the definition of television is changing quite radically. Ask a 20-year-old what the television experience is, and half of them will tell you it's on their laptop. Okay? This is my television, and my laptop is my television, and my big screen is my television. And so what user interface am I going to use to interact with my television? It depends on which television. It also depends on how I want to operate. There's some large number, like 40% of all people are what they call dual screening, which that means is they're using the laptop concurrently with watching a larger screen. And the presumption that the user interface is going to only happen on the big screen is silly, because what you're going to have is people are going to use this to browse what they want to watch next. And they might source that information from the internet. They might source it from something they've stored here or from their NAS on their local system. And then they're going to project it to wherever they want to. And they want to have total control over this experience. The home network piece of this is we have to provide a ubiquitous, seamless hardware infrastructure that allows this to flow, whether it's over wireless or whether it's over wired. We need to do this, and where G.hn fits in is we allow that over the wired network and try to do that as seamlessly as possible. But as an ultimate goal, we want to be in a situation where all of it can flow in any direction at any time.
I think Michael's brought up, though, an interesting angle on all this, is that there's a kind of, that's the superset, is that. But then you've got the subset, which is my parents. And all, probably many of our parents and some people, my colleagues, who only use their mobile phone and can't even text message properly. You know, how are they going to do this distribution of video?
So you don't need this kind of Rolls-Royce solution for...
It mustn't depend on it. I agree. It's going to be an increasingly attractive model. Exactly. But again, I think, you know, at the moment, I think the majority of people actually are much simpler users than that.
So this is in terms of commercial viability.
No. This is in terms of a user experience, and you know, a lot of people will sit there and actually want to use the mobile control. You know, just the existing remote control. I agree with you. In the future, it's going to be more and more and more of the clever stuff, but there's going to be a huge rump. So the system, again, mustn't depend on that. It must certainly allow that, but it mustn't depend on that.
But let me give you an example. You go to my parents' house, and they have 8 remote controls. Yeah. Okay, they've got one for each device, and my father has written out a set of instructions for my mother. Use this one for
user interface.
And because we think of the remote control as an easy-to-use device. And it's not today. Even just the most fundamental remote control is a nightmare for most of those type of
I agree with you, and I think if you get some commonality in that, that would be a good thing, and maybe it will be the iPhone or whatever. I absolutely agree with you. But I mean, there've been a number of attempts to make sort of universal remotes. They've all failed. So you know, you have to understand why.
I think we're moving to a device which is going to become defunct and redundant. I think most people are looking to interface through a screen of some sort, and touch control or an Apple device. I think remotes are the wrong thing to be talking about. We're living in a world where as people age, they are getting smarter. There is nobody in my home that does a single task application at all. If we do things, we have multiple windows open, and we're Skyping while doing an Excel file, while looking at something on the internet. We're still building too many applications for the users that are simple in nature. Users are able to multitask. They're looking for that, the ability to save money and time.
Some users are. I think there is still a huge legacy of people out there. And again, if you actually say, okay, we're going to switch overnight, and no one does this, I think that would be a huge mistake. I agree with you going forward. We want to enable more and more of this stuff, but I still think there's a real danger in overestimating the ability and willingness of the people to adopt some of this stuff.
I think a classic example is the Sky EPG. You know, that is, with respect to Sky, it's very basic. Yeah. But that's because, fundamentally, and I'm interpreting, I'm not knowing any inside information, as it were, it's simple. Everyone knows how to use it. And if
you've limited yourself to half the market.
If people phone up the call centre have you tried this, have you tried this, have you tried this? Have you pressed the Sky Plus button, the blue button, to make sure you go back and just stop all this, something that might be happening. Again, so the fact is it's simple, and so you have to, again, I see it as the subset and supersets. Yeah, you have to have the superset that encounters all the people who've got the iPhones and multiple windows. Then you've got this subset, which is a huge subset. You know, if you talk to the pay TV operators, these are their target markets. these people that need it simple, and they just want to watch their TV.
Yeah.
That's all they want to watch.
In those circumstances, the definition of the home network is quite small.
Exactly.
Right? In that case, that person may not have the sophistication to move video from one place to another place. Yeah. They might just get it from the service provider, which is fine.
Yeah.
But with your richer, wider set of applications and yours, Mike, I mean, do you see a unified user interface that is that the ideal? Is that either you as a consumer electronics provider or the pay TV provider will have something that will, because that's what people like TV everywhere are talking about. They want to.
Everybody likes to innovate, and there is no one anything. Pick a market where there's one way of thinking, there's one way to interface. Every consumer electronic company is looking to increase margin, and a panel is a panel is a panel, and a channel is a channel is a channel. So user interface is one of the places where consumer electronic companies think they can add value. Yeah. And I would be astounded if 100 years from now we have one user interface, or 50 years from now. We have different people who think differently, who behave differently, who have different mental models, and they appreciate different approaches to things. And I think it's unrealistic to think there'll be one.
And it's even more exciting now because the iPhone, I think, has proved to all the user interface people that they didn't really know what they were talking about because Apple's redefined the model again. And so all the whole TV space, whether it's any part of the network, any part of the whole consumer electronics and industries that we work in, has suddenly gone, oh, we all need an iPhone something or other.
This is in terms of its feel and
just something
turning it around.
Innovative, and some of the basic movements on that iPhone, are all basic technical stuff.
But I would agree with John.
It's a combination of it.
That level of innovation has not happened on the TV, and it will.
It will.
But it hasn't. But it hasn't yet.
Yeah.
And I think we've got to move back from this and say, well, that is a particular market, which is home entertainment, and it's TV related. We are moving into a world within the next 20 years. Most of the population across Europe is going to be old and frail and need some sort of health support, which means we've got to get a user interface which allows a person to monitor their health. And I think the same as today you have a user interface in a car, you have a user interface in your lounge to your TV, you have a user interface to your PC when you're working on it, you will have multiple user interfaces that the users will adopt because it's in their benefit.
You're 100% right. And for me, what that means is it's all about phasing. It's not the home network. The home network is made up of multiple different parts of it, and it's evolutionary. Usually evolutionary means incremental, so you're adding something to what's already there, and then it building up to the big thing. There's not going to be one big bang of a home network suddenly. Maybe BT could move in and move in on all those BT Vision customers.
You just can't. No, you just can't. You can't impose that. And you can't impose that quickly.
Well, I think BT are already moving in by going down the ALA route, so they're already opening up the ability for that to happen.
But you need to separate between the infrastructure, like telephony is an infrastructure, and then the applications that run on top of it. Of course the devices are going to move to telemedicine. Of course the devices are going to move to smart energy and so forth. But if we have instability in the infrastructure, this is going to be a disaster. It will be very, very difficult. And that's why I think that G.hn is so useful, because I feel like finally we've coming to a converged wired standard that's going to allow stability in the infrastructure that will allow innovation in the application.